Hey guys, it's Aaron Gwynaire here from Defy Reality Entertainment, as you can see coming up on the screen now. I'm going to do a commentary video of me talking about the test build, this test build that I recently released, Felitsu Island Walkway. And I'm going to go through a couple of things, design ideas, things that didn't go to plan, or things that will change up, and a lot of different things that will come up as I'm playing this. And it's good because I've had a bit of a gap from it since I've sort of released it out on YouTube and shared it out, you know, for people to test and everything like that. So this is really cool. So this is Neyyah, the Felitsu Island Walkway test build. And I'll just go through everything and I'll give my sort of commentary over it. So this is like the temporary menu for the game. This is not going to be the final menu for the game at all. This was just an idea I had that I thought nice and simple. Player can actually quickly press the play game button and they're on the same scene, ready to go. Which is an idea I've actually got for the actual final release of the game too, but in a slightly different way. So I decided to add like an instructions screen as well, screens should I say. Again, this won't be in the actual final game. It'll be presented in a slightly different way, but this was written up just for the test build. It's quite wordy, but goes into some cool things about the load and save, the inventory system, the options. So those things there, the inventory, the load save, and the options, there are actually things that I really wanted to highlight in this test build. As one of the main reasons why I actually decided to create this test build was to showcase the inventory, the load save, all those things for the first time in Neyyah history. And you got all the cursors as well that I designed, fresh cursors. That was really fun. These are actually designed in Blender, and then they were brought into Photoshop and edited. And it took a while actually to get these cursors to appear nicely on screen. So that was a cool experience. Also some keyboard shortcuts as well. So I really upped it a bit more compared to the other builds that I've done. And you can find them on YouTube as well and on Patreon. And I think I've got another commentary on video on Patreon where I talk about my November 2020 Watchtower test build. So you can check that out on YouTube. I believe that's on YouTube. So you can return to menu. I noticed that some of the hotspots don't cover the entire area that they should be covering, mainly because I knew it was a test build, and so I didn't really want too much about it needs to be perfect. I think sometimes when you go to the side of the screen as well with the cursor, it kind of goes back to default instead of left or right as it should do. So yeah. And I'm using music here that I composed back in like 2018, because I finished. I had some other music for Spordock's Island test build in 2019 that I recorded, and after that I just haven't had the facilities or the equipment to record any more music since then. So I'm really looking forward to one day getting back into that and getting into a nice, good big session of composing music for Neyyah. So here we go. I'll go to the credits as well. So just. Basically everything's done by me, but it's there's been a bit of assistance, to be honest, with this particular build from the Visionaire Discord community, which has been really nice. And you can see there Esmeralda, Dionys, and Christopher. They've really they did wonders with certain aspects, the UI and certain things I didn't really know how to do at all in Visionaire, and it was all very new to me, so they really helped out, and they really helped bring it to the standards I now. So thank you so much, guys. We don't want to exit game just yet, so we're going to play game. The music actually fades out at that point and goes into the sounds, which we're playing anyway. Really liked that. I think if you clicked forward too many times, the music actually cuts out too quickly, which is annoying. But if you stayed in that position and just let the music fade out, it was a really nice transition to the game and felt quite natural as well. So yeah, we can just turn around. Again, this game is a 2D slideshow first-person point-and-click game in the style of mainly Riven, I'd say, but also the original Myst game as well. And basically really pushes the player to observe everything that's in front of them without being distracted by turning around too much. Each image encapsulates a particular scene in the setting that you're in, and that enables you to read one image and see everything. What's that say? So yeah, this is Felitsu Island Walkway. I'm not saying any more than that. This is what it's called. Originally I actually called it Marble Island Walkway. And this is actually the first set that I created, one of the first sets I created for Neyyah, and it was designed in 2018. And it was then revamped in 2019, I believe, or towards the end of 2018. And there's actually a small little test build, I'll link it in the description of the video, which shows me playing a very early test build that was done in Adventure Maker. So that was pretty cool. That was a different engine to Visionaire Studio, which I use here, and yeah, you can see how it's sort of leapt in the design field. It's kind of gone in a very cool direction, and yeah, really impressed with how it's come about. So designing the cursors was a cool thing. I actually took inspiration from crikey, I wonder if I've got the game up here. I can actually show it to you on the camera. Here we go. Destroying everything. So this game here, Necronomicon, The Dawning of Darkness. This was a game that came out in 2001, and great game, really fun game, spooky game, and it runs in a 360 degree panoramic view engine, a bit like Myst 3, and there are quite a few other games that came out as well. Amazon, I forgot how you pronounce it, that had the same engine as well. But the cursors in that game, I really wanted to sort of pick out something that wasn't just the pointy hand. I wanted something different. I wanted something that was Neyyah, very Neyified. And I actually took a lot of inspiration from that game in terms of its cursor design. So you can see here the default cursor is just a small little silver icon. And I think in Necronomicon it was actually like a green colour instead. But very simple. I liked that. Default being a very small little cursor. And you can see it appears quite nicely on the screen as well. And for an action cursor I thought, well, it can light up blue and have like a crosshair kind of design. And that worked really nicely. I don't think I had them on the wall here anymore, but I had... Oh, I've got something here. Cursor design sketches. So this is like some basic cursor ideas that I had that I just sketched down. I think I used some of them, but they evolved anyway, like anything does in Neyyah. When you run into 3D, suddenly everything changes compared to what it was in the concept sketches. But yeah, I was quite happy with that. And the magnifying glass, everything turned out quite nicely. So in the full version there might be more of a shake here on this door, trying to move it. This kept it quite simple really. So yeah, a lot of these models are actually designed in 2018. For me they're very dated. They're very... I was using 3D modeling programs when I was about sort of 13, 14 onwards, and I was using Animator mainly. That was actually the only program I used, sorry. And I then got into Blender in 2018, so it was a good while later. And you know, it was fantastic. I really loved the way Blender had the cycles rendering engine, and it was just great just using that. But my skills have definitely improved since I modelled this set. You can still tell it's a Neyyah set, but I feel like there's going to be some revamping done to this this set at some point down the track. So I've got some ideas for that. Basically keeping it more in tow with what I've got currently going, or what I've been doing for the last few months, because the actual aesthetical style, the look of Neyyah has become a lot stronger, and in terms of being bound by the story and the conveying that story through the environment. I think back at this point it was a bit all over the place. A bit like, I guess, when they did Myst, everything was a bit kind of all random and didn't really follow any kind of sense, which is cool. I think Robin Miller said in an interview that it was Myst's sort of more fantastical kind of appeal that appealed to people. I guess for me, I kind of definitely prefer more of that Riven look and the more real sense of things. So the arrow was actually an interesting thing. I created a normal arrow, then I tilted it to make it look like it was actually going more forward. That actually created more of a feeling like you were actually moving forward, which was quite nice. Then going up, I just elongated it and actually had it kind of flat, so that's cool. So music is quite sort of scarce in this test build, as it was with the Watchtower test build. I really want to focus on sound and have music come in at certain points of your exploration to highlight certain things. I think that's really important, and I was thinking up here you've got the menu, I'll go into that soon as well. Up here you've got the options, and I was thinking, what options can I have? I think one of the things that's come up is maybe having an option where you can actually turn off sound, turn up and turn the sound up and down, turn the music up and down. That's cool, but I think with Neyyah, as with Riven, the music is actually going to play in certain scenes, and it's not going to be playing all the time anyway. And sounds, that really keeps everything immersive. I don't think there's going to be any option to change those, and I think it's just my own kind of judgment and arrangement of where the music should be and where it should appear in the game, which is going to be quite... I've already got some really good ideas for that, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, the options menu was actually really fun to come up with. I was thinking of things that, how could things enable the player to have more of a fun experience, or tailor it to their own kind of needs. There are movement animations in Neyyah, as you've seen probably in the other test builds. Transitions was an interesting one because, as a 2D slideshow point-and-click game, when you move forward, it kind of fades into the image. You can actually turn that off, and in this particular area I'm in now at the moment, those transitions are now gone. It just shuts, clips, whatever you want to call it. It just changes to the next image straight away, so that's really cool. If you want to get around really quickly, that helps. So that's the options of the transitions there. You can turn it back on. The hotspot hints, that was a cool thing I added, mainly because in the Myst and Riven games, particularly Riven, what would happen is you would have the player clicking around everywhere on the screen, trying to work out what they can click on. Mainly because in Riven as well, the cursor didn't really change so much. In this game it does, which then enables the player to actually know what they're clicking on. As you can see there, it changes to activate the activation cursor. But I actually thought, well, can I take that another step forward and maybe have sort of little hints to say, hey, you can actually zoom in on this, you can see things closer, and without having to spend ages trying to work out what that is or whereabouts that is on the screen. So when you actually turn that on, you will now see these little arrows appear where you can actually zoom in and inspect things, or it tells you up here to look up. Now another thing that's come up is this. So the menu is actually triggered by the mouse going right to the top of the screen, which is really cool. When you go up here, it actually goes to the up cursor straight away, before it actually touches the top of the screen, enabling the menu to come down. If you just go like that and you want to look up, that's actually a bit annoying. So I might be looking at a different way of having the menu appear, maybe with the escape button, something like that, or maybe with a little icon in the corner of the screen that when you click it, it actually brings the menu down. So, and maybe having another little icon in the corner of the menu that closes it. So that's something I'm going to be thinking about doing. But again, you got the arrow that says you can look down, or you can look at that, and so forth. And that music only played once, by the way, so that it kind of highlights a particular moment in that, only that one time that you look at it in the first period. It's actually going to happen like that when you see animals in the game as well. So sort of creatures. One idea is having birds flying overhead, that kind of thing, and that might only happen in this particular scene. For example, you might see the birds flying around that mountain and flying away, and when you turn back to look at the mountain, you know, they're not going to be doing it anymore. Or it might happen another time, maybe when you come here later on. So it's not like a continuous, pardon me, it's not a continuous loop. It's going to be something that appears quite natural as well. So yeah, we haven't actually left this spot yet, and I'm rambling on. So we're gonna go down here. I'm just gonna turn off the hotspots, and we're going to keep the movement animations on because I really want to show you guys the movement animations. Now, in the other test builds you've seen on YouTube, movement animations do take place in Neyyah. It's mainly for like climbing up and down ladders, maybe climbing up and down stairs, that kind of thing. It kind of adds a bit more dimension to the game. It's actually an inspiration that was taken from the game Dragon Lore 2, which I also have here in an awesome boxed edition that I got fairly recently. Massive inspiration for me in terms of game design and anything creative that I've ever done, whether it be you know, clay modeling, drawing, creating creatures when I was a kid, and painting and stuff. This game here really inspired me, and it's a fantastic game. I don't know if you can actually get this now on Steam or GOG or anything. I think I downloaded it from another site about a couple or so years ago, and it's very hard to play on modern day computers, but you can actually watch playthroughs of it on YouTube, and it's the way you navigate around the game is that you click and an animation of you plays of you moving forward, and when you turn left you actually turn. It's all pre-rendered, and it's not real time, but it's all pre-rendered, and at the time they could use those pre-rendered graphics to make something that looked really realistic whilst giving a bit more dimension to the actual gameplay. So I've kind of used that as my own as an inspiration for Neyyah and how to get around, but the actual amount of render time it would take to render each shot of you turning around is just diabolical, considering how big Neyyah is going to be. So for now anyway, the game will rely on mostly clicking around, and it follows that Rivenese, that Riven style of gameplay, which is, you know, one of the reasons why I actually started working on Neyyah, because I really wanted to create a game that was like Riven, especially after seeing how good Blender was at rendering things in Cycle's rendering engine. So only certain areas at the moment will actually animate when you move up and down a ladder, for example. You can actually click anywhere on the screen and it will fade away, and so will the sound. So you can actually also prevent those animations if you want to get around quickly. Oh, wrong one. And you can actually turn them off, and it will go straight to the image. You know, so you can actually bypass that quite nicely. So that was one of the options I've added, so I thought that was a cool option for the player to have. But the sounds for the game, I actually used sounds that I created in 2019. but a lot of them are actually also sourced from freesound.org, and I've also credited those artists that recorded those sounds in the YouTube video for this test build. And I then brought them into Sonar Cakewalk and mixed them and arranged them and edited them in the ways that I needed to, and they turned out really nicely actually. To be honest though, the movement animations, they were taken from the Watchtower test build of like going up and down the ladders in that test build, and then changed to time well with these animations. I had problems opening the old files for some reason, so I had to bring in those files and change them around and cut them around. It didn't take too long, and sound design is something I really love doing because I'm a musician anyway. So I've produced music, I've recorded music, I used to perform a lot as well as a singer-songwriter. So that kind of field is something I really can't wait to really get my hands into when it comes down to Neyyah's design. Now the waves were added using Scroll's water reflections, as with the other test build I did in 2020, November 2020, the Watchtower one. They are then masked on top of the actual render, and I use Adobe After Effects also to help create that effect. I think I've got a video on Patreon as well that goes into that a bit more, which is quite cool. I think it might be on YouTube actually. This particular scene here though is my favourite one, because what happened with as I was designing adding these water masks is that I was experimenting with the ripple effect itself, and for example, if I go over here and then zoom in on this boiler, the actual effect had to be different for this close-up in comparison to being this far away. And so it came up pretty well. I mean, you can see here actually, I was pointing at it. I'll point at it with the cursor so you can actually see it. You can see a bit of the wood there that's actually rippling into the water there. So the actual mask wasn't as good as it could be. You can see it happening there too. So yeah, it's kind of a perception thing as well. You don't want the water to look like it's too big, you want it to look quite close, and the actual detail of the waves kind of makes this look like it's absolutely massive, and the waves are really small. So a couple of things there to think about. I think that was one of the first models I ever designed in Blender, by the way, and it might change for the final game, but it was an actual I think it was an experiment that went wrong, and somehow it just ended up in the game. But this scene over here, this actually has the best ripple effect, I think, that I created so far for this test build, because the waves at the bottom here are bigger, and they actually get smaller and smaller as they go out, which is what they're supposed to do, to really help create that nice realistic effect. And these are just giant dartboards. I think they were literally one of the first models I created for this game. They were retextured, like I said, in late 2018. But yeah, they came out quite nicely. You know, it was so satisfying creating the little sounds to these little animations, just hearing them come together. It was so nice. Especially when the sounds are just perfect, you know, when they're the right kind of sound for what's really happening. You have to kind of really think about it. What kind of metal, what kind of wood is scraping on what, and it's really fun to come up with that. And surprisingly, it doesn't take very long. I tend to work quite quickly with sound, which is great. So then, one of the cursors I created was the cogs, which indicates that you can insert an item. That was also inspired by the Necronomicon game as well. And I had a lot of problems actually with this particular hotspot and the other hotspot, which is up over there, because they react to inventory items, and for some reason the inventory item itself, when it becomes the cursor, was reacting to this, even if you didn't have the inventory item. It was a bit of a headache to get around. But again, the guys from the Visionaire Discord helped massively in this. Another cool thing is the sounds getting louder as you approach things and as you move away from them. It really adds a bit of immersion to the actual game, like realism. It doesn't just stop, it fades away. And yeah, I'll go into details with that soon as well on this video. I'll go into the details with how I did that in Visionaire. Over here we have another animation. I'm actually going to skip that quickly and go back. Now you can see here the portal, which is also done in Adobe After Effects, mainly just with Adobe After Effects. I didn't use any swirls, water reflections on that. That was actually, they were quite fun to add, and again really added that nice sci-fi cool effect to the game. But when you move up here to this platform, this effect completely disappears, and just you have the basic, the original image showing, as you can see here. See? All gone. And then it appears again once the animation finishes. So the reason for that is mainly because it was just going to take so long. Frame by frame of that animation where you see the portal, adding that effect in. Slight hassle there. Maybe there's another way I can get around that, or maybe trying to think about ways in which where I set the animation up, I avoid having to have those kind of things happen within an animation of you moving forward. For example, if that, where is it? I can actually see it from this angle. I'll go back here in a minute. If this portal was on from a distance, maybe a bit further away from here than here, I wouldn't have to really add an effect like this, because you know, you can tell it was a portal. I could if I wanted to, but it kind of works really nicely when you get close to it, and sparkly sound as well, which is quite cool. So indicates that you can't get through. One thing I did add was the 180 degree turnaround icons. So in Myst and Riven, I think particularly Riven, they had like the cursor, so the finger was like curled in like this, and it looked really weird. But it basically indicates that you can turn 180 degrees. So I was like, that's something I think I'll definitely need to add. And I thought, well, how about you know, the left and right cursor, but then having it tilted like it's turned towards the player a bit more. And it just works really nicely, I think. It shows you that you can turn 180 degrees there, and then you can just turn 90 degrees when it's like the normal arrow. And I think over here is an example of the cursor changing to default when it shouldn't do so. On the edge of the screen there, it's a bit faulty. Well, that's cool. Some of the things that did come up in this test build that were kind of like faulty, I kind of knew about, but I didn't really want to put too much time into it because I've got so much other work to do with the game. I wanted to get this build to a certain point, mainly the inventory and the everything, getting the save and load options, the options and everything, getting that going, and that was it. The actual mask in this portal as well is off. You can actually see here that it's not fitting very well. This is kind of stuff that not many people might actually pick up on, but I do. But there you go. The test build works for what it needs to do. You can look up. This is actually one of the most basic models I created, and just looking back at it, it's just so old. I just feel like it could be a lot better, so we'll see. When I created the animations, I always think about, you know, the little tilts, the little movements. I always want to add the details into them, and I think I'll probably be looking at the frames being a bit higher as well, the frames per second. Because I do sort of lag now. There is a bit of a problem here. I've actually got my hotspots off, but for some reason this one wants to show up again. A little fault there. Now it says you can zoom in, so you can zoom in, and there's a box case kind of thing. Now this was designed very quickly, this box as well, and the placement of where it appears in the test build is very temporary. It was created for the test build. It's not actually going to show up in the game like this. But I didn't need to, but I wanted to bring it in so that there was an interaction with inventory items. So, zoom in, pick it up. Cool little sound plays of like music and the sound of it actually opening. The menu comes down saying that you've actually picked it up and it's now part of the menu. So now I'm just going to go into the menu as well and just show you a few things here. The longest journey was one of the inspirations for how this menu bar was going to look. I was talking to one of the Visionaire Discord members, I think it was Christopher, about how a menu can appear on the screen and look like it's part of the world, but then at the same time is disconnected from it. So it does look like it's part of the environment. And the darker look really worked. And so I actually just threw together a few different rendered shots and kind of placed them and layered them together in Photoshop. So that was really cool. There's a palm tree here, and a bit of rock there, and there's also a portal ring there, a plank of wood. They're from different old test renders that I did. I just threw them together, so it worked out pretty well. The inventory idea was having like a box that the player carries, and the player actually comes across these crates in the game. When you click on it, it appears in front of you, and your inventory items will appear here as well, inside the box. And what's cool is that you can actually see through the gaps of this mesh. The mesh is actually a very basic model, and I kind of feel like it's too basic, but it kind of works for what it needs to do. You can see there the actual geometry is very obvious. I feel like it could look a bit better, but it works quite nicely. It was put together very quickly too. These cursors here, I mean these icons, they're really fun to come up with. I think it was my sister, she mentioned it looks like a golden snitch from Harry Potter. And I can see that. I can definitely see that resemblance. But I wasn't thinking about Harry Potter when I created it. I just thought they looked really cool and kind of actually work nicely with the story of the game as well. I'm not going to say any more about that. So that's these are kind of like icons that appear and open up, and you can click on them, and I use them for the menu here as well. The sound at first was a very clunky sound. It just sounded really terrible for I'm just going to close this. It sounded really terrible for the actual menu, especially when you did this. It sounded horrible. So I created a much lighter sound, a much thinner sound, and it worked quite nicely because the metal opening up is more of a thin metal rather than a thick metal, so it kind of made sense. The animation of the icons opening, I'll probably make a bit faster. There's been a lot of feedback saying that they're too slow. They could open up straight away, or I could speed up the animations. One thing I couldn't really get around, maybe I'll be able to do that eventually, is the fading of the actual image. The contrast and the brightness changes. So it's dark and then it goes lighter as it opens up and then goes back to dark, as you can see with the colour there. It's not too much of a big issue, but I don't know why that was happening. For some reason the player box is actually open when it should be closed. So now and again these icons actually stay open when they shouldn't be open. That's a slight fault at the moment that happens. A slight bug. There's the player box. We've got the load and save menu. So now I've picked it up, I can actually go in here. I've actually got a saved game in there already. I can delete it. Now if I delete it, it goes straight away. Really I should have some kind of little dialog box that says, are you sure you want to delete your game? So that would be cool, just in case someone clicks delete accidentally. What's really cool though is that once you save a game and you click on it, it says the game is selected. It tells you which game you've selected. You then click the right button to deselect, and you can click that one, and I save another game there, and it says, oh, it's selected. And I can delete it if I want to. So that's pretty cool. And the menu was very basic. Yeah, it might take a slightly different look for the actual final menu design, but I did like the idea that the plasma, which is a very kind of iconic Neyyah look, was actually used for the slots of the actual menu. So that was pretty cool. And I used a background image of one of the scenes I was working on at the time, which is actually the Paita factory zone of Felitsu Island. So yeah, that was what I was working on at the time. So I used that as the background. Worked out quite nicely. So yeah, sometimes you can work long periods of time on one thing and never get it right. And then you can work really quickly on something and not really think too much about it, and suddenly it just looks, it works. It just works. So it's funny how things go. Yeah, you can just go back. I actually had a really cool transition for the menu when it popped up and disappeared, but I didn't like it in the end. It was kind of like a tunnel effect, like the image kind of goes, like you're looking down a tunnel and it goes black and then goes back into the image kind of thing. It was just a bit too kind of I don't know, like one of those sort of cheesy Batman movies you get. It's like, kind of those transitions that you had in those old movies. Didn't really like it. Didn't really work. Yeah. So this is the build. This is the Felitsu Island test build. You've got lots of pipes, as you can see here. Yeah. I think that maybe with the revamping, some things could look a bit different for the final game. Not too different, but just a bit neater. So this area here was actually inspired by a place I'm actually looking at going to again very soon, but I haven't been for years. I used to go when I was a kid. A place called Walkway on the Neyyah, here in the UK, and you can actually see it from Felitsu Beach, very close to where I live. And it's usually just like a silhouette against the skyline, like this tower and like a strip of land. And I was seeing that all the time as a kid, and a lot of the things that I was around as a child, they've inspired Neyyah, and I really wanted to bring that into the game in some way, so I did. It's a lot closer than the tower one on the Neyyah, but depending, I might actually have it a bit further away in the final game, maybe more in the distance. I'm not too sure. Or if it's going to be here, I'm going to add a lot more details to this beach, or maybe flatten the beach a bit. It just seems a bit rushed. So we have our Paita box, and you can open it, and it has items in it. Now, I say inventory items, there's kind of like a sub-inventory system as well. So you have the main inventory, which is up here, and you have something else where you can take items out of, and the idea is that the player can also pick up journals and maps and other things as well, so there'll be a kind of an icon for that in the menu. That was one of the things I think that was quite annoying, particularly with Riven, is that you have these journals that you read, but you have to keep going back to those journals to kind of look back on the information that you might have forgotten, unless you took a note of it. So it'd be kind of cool in Neyyah to actually have access to those picked up journals and look at them whenever you want to. I think that's something they did in Myst Exile, which, you had Atrus's journal in Riven, that was at the bottom all the time, but the other journals you couldn't pick up. So it'd be cool to have that option in this game. So I created a very quick little icon here for like taking something out of the Paita case. I'm not going to explain what Paita means, but these are Paitas basically. I just explained what they are. What I meant is not going into too much detail. I don't want to go into the backstory too much. So yeah, they have cool symbols on. Oh wait, what's that? That looks like a symbol. This has a line going through it as a circle, and the boxes here. The third one down is coloured black. Well, the actual boxes here are black, but this one's coloured in a white colour. So, but it's the third one down, and there's a line going through. So these items, the actual artwork for the items, were created quite quickly. I haven't really put too much emphasis or ideas into what the paietis are going to look like, but they've turned out quite cool. They turned out quite nice actually. And I can just pick up an item, it becomes my cursor, I can right click and it goes back into the box. I can actually click on each one and it swaps. So there are a few bugs that were happening where, you know, for example, I'll go in here and suddenly my cursor's turned into the item, but I haven't even taken it out of the box yet. Or I'll go into the box and one of the items is gone. They were quite annoying, and I hope, you know, I might come across those again later down the track. Hopefully I don't, but there are ways around that. So I can take my item. Oh wait, I've picked the wrong item, but I don't know that. Pretend I don't know that. I'm now going back into the game and it's gone. So, unless you have the right item, it will actually go back into the inventory. This was actually a way of getting around a problem I had where, you know, if you could be anywhere in the game, if you pick up the item, it becomes a cursor. But then I had the problem of it changing to the actual cursor it should be when you go to the left or the right of the screen, for example, or zooming in. So to get around that, on the actual scene that you use an item, if you pick the right one, it will appear. It will actually become the item on the screen. And you can right click and it will go back. Hopefully, yes. So that's pretty cool. And I think, you know, people, you know, the player might be able to actually brute force these puzzles with inventory items, but at the same time, you're going to realise if you pick an item out of the case or wherever, and you try and use it on a particular thing, it's not going to work anyway. So it's kind of saving you time and frustration. I kind of like it. So it might stay, it might not, but it works, I think. It works pretty nicely. So when you put the item in, it makes a cool sound. That violin-y sound, that was, I can't even remember how I created that, but it wasn't a violin, it wasn't a musical instrument, it was, I think it was a picture of some kind of sound effect that I pitched to a certain key, and then added reverb and stuff, and it had this really cool sound. It actually reminds me a lot of some of the violin-y sounds from the game Dark Fall, which is a really cool kind of supernatural game. Very cool game. So that was the paieto being inserted. And you can see it appears now. That was quite fun as well. That was a cool thing when you start adding things like that. You see the item there now. That's actually just a cropped image that's then stuck to the render and only appears if the paieto is inserted. Very simple kind of programming stuff going on there. Visionaire doesn't require much coding at all, and I'll go into that. Like I said, with the other thing, I'll go into Visionaire and show the actual build shortly and how I put things together. So we have one of the items inserted there. One thing I'm thinking of with this set as well is probably maybe having these islands a bit further away. I feel that they're a bit too close. Also, they're very basic models. You probably don't see it yourselves. I mean, no one's really going to think about it too much, but they're very basic models, and they're actually just models and assets taken from other models and then enlarged and thrown into the distance. It was done very quickly. but basically it was supposed to symbolise that there's land out there and that things are happening, which was kind of cool. This coffee is very cold. Kind of like an old buildings over there, but the windows look so like literally just cut out from the geometry of the actual model. Not much detail going on, maybe not much is really needed anyway, but I feel like that should be further away. But yeah, so this is the other area where we can use an item. There's another symbol there. There's a reason why these become black and white as well. It was kind of actually a way of getting around a bug, but then I used that in the game to make sense, so it kind of works actually quite nicely. Sometimes things that go wrong, I think to myself, well, okay, let's work with it. Let's make it a thing that's right. And sometimes that actually works out really well and actually pushes the story even further. It's fantastic. It's really cool when things like that work out. So now open my little box here. This is probably going to get a bit of a revamp. It looks very basic at the moment, but it kind of works still, you know. But I definitely feel like I could do a better job in terms of modelling. I can actually slide these up and down. The actual areas where you can click on are very small, and I think some people have actually struggled with these. So it's kind of looking at the hotspots again and making sure they're big enough and don't overlap. So what's really cool as well, like for example, I've set that to that position, I close the grate, I can save my game, I can load my game, or load this one, deselect, load this one. Just to make sure, again, that the loading and saving is working. Obviously I haven't got my item in there anyway, so obviously it's worked. All the sliders are up in the original position. I'll load this one. It's on. Oh, there they are. That was such a satisfying moment for me. I've dabbled in Adventure Maker before Visionaire, and I created a demo for a game called Portals, Journey to the Pearl Islands. And that was done in Adventure Maker, and I actually got, I created one level that you can actually complete. I didn't add a load or save game option, from what I remember. I don't think I did. No, I don't think I did. But anyway, it wasn't as cool as this one. If I did. It was just so satisfying for me to finally see within Neyyah the option to save your progress. And I was thinking to myself for so long, how am I going to do this? I've never done it before in Visionaire. And it turned out to be a really cool experience and a bit of a learning curve as well. And when I started working with UI and working with the menu and cursors and stuff, I started looking at other games in a really different way. Because it's so different to creating the environments and stitching everything together like it is here, being able to turn around and move around and click things and stuff. When you're working with UI and menus and how things should look, it's just a very different way of designing things and looking at things. And yeah, it was really cool. I think this scene here in the background was a render from the environment I was designing at the time. I think it was the Paita factory zone, yes. So it's the same area as the load and save menu. And I liked how also the sound stops as well. Kind of gives you a bit of time to sort of think. And then it comes back in. So I like that. That's cool. And you click this one, and the portal disappears, which was the mission of this little test build as well, to turn off that portal. I should say force field. So that was really cool. it kind of gives no explanation as to why that worked, but during the entire game you find out why. So yeah, that was the kind of menu there of should I say the goodbye screen, just thanking everyone. And that was the Neyyah test build. I think here I've actually been looking at a little screen, a few renders from an environment I'm creating at the moment, and just stitching them together to see what they look like. But what I'm going to do shortly, and I'll splice this into the video, is go through a couple of things that you've seen in that build and how I put them together in Visionaire. Before I actually do that, I'm going to show you this little build that's going on, which is quite cool. So what's really cool now is that anything I kind of just want to experiment with, like rendered images and nodes and stuff, and seeing how the player can move around, I've now got this new build that I've got the menu sorted out, I've got my icons, I've got my cursors, so it's really cool actually just being able to have that now in the actual in the builds themselves. So yeah, I shall return very shortly with the Visionaire stuff. I hope you enjoyed that, and stay tuned. Bye guys!